Welcome to Mitch Makes, guys. Today we're going to build a lamp. Yes, a desk lamp. It's my first one. I used the lathe. I'm just going to cut some wood down, roughly whatever length you want. I stripped it into about 3-inch width planks. I'm going to cut the center one in half. And really all I'm doing here is just trying to leave a gap for the wire or cable. I cut these little strips, and that leaves room for my wire, which is about 1/8 of an inch thick. I've definitely got more of a gap there. That way I don't have to drill clear through this thing. I know I've got center points. I'll just drill in roughly 2 inches. Here I'm just going to glue it up. And I used a lot of glue. It's kind of soaked in a little at this point, but yada yada yada, you get it. Clamp the heck out of it. Let it sit overnight. This will be the base. I'm going to use 3 pieces of maple and just kind of stack them up, and then I also glue on roughly a 4-inch square to the bottom here, which will actually be the top of the base. So at this point we could go to the lathe, but I decided to square this up on the joiner and the table saw and turn this roughly into an 8-sided octagon. So I'm happy with the post. Now I want to rough out the base on the bandsaw and then off to the lathe. I'm going to start turning the base, and I really don't have a design concept in mind here. I'm just turning and making it round, getting rid of the excess. Seems like a good idea. This is the back of the base, the bottom of the base. I'm trying to put a tenon on here so that I can chuck it up in the jaws. It just seemed like the right thing to do, guys, so I did it, right? For the top of the base, I'm using a 1 5/8" drill. I should have used 2-inch, but I used 1 5/8. So for the actual spindle top part thingamabobber, I'm just going to rough it out. Says that you don't know what half of these parts are called, so maybe you should learn that. Oh, no response. That's awesome. Just ignore him. Now, I do have to put a tenon on this to fit the base. So back to that 1 5/8, which I should have made 2. This is mineral spirits just because I'm going to sand it. I've been sanding at this point and I cut all the sanding footage out. I didn't figure you guys really wanted to watch a bunch of sanding. The chuck that I have, I don't have the right fittings to make it smaller, so this fits in, but it's loose, and that's as tight as it goes. Yes, that's electrical tape. I know. I did it. It actually worked. I just really clamped it down because I wasn't sure what I was doing. Wouldn't recommend it. So ultimately, it's a good idea to know what size chuck jaws you have. Not real sure. I think I used a 2-inch here, even though at this point it was irrelevant. This is a 3/8. Drill that in. Now you'll see here I just grabbed those threads with gloves on and I just jammed them in there. Now my wife was right beside the E-stop, so once again, use your own judgment. And now I'm just going to drill down through this with the the drill press. You could actually do this by hand. This is the bottom, so it does not have to be straight at all. Now the tenon on the bottom of the base, I did just drill it off. I just used a 2-inch Forstner bit and just cut it off, ran it down into the base a little. I also went back through this with a, I don't even know what size drill bit here, and I just punched all the way through. It's just something big enough for the wire. On the router, I used a straight cutoff bit, spiral thing, and I just put a little groove in there. It actually didn't turn out very straight, but I guess that's okay because it doesn't matter. At this point, we're just going to glue the base to the post, the spindle. Now I made a top piece. There's 2 pieces of pine, 3 pieces of maple. I'm going to chuck this up on the lathe, and then I also roughed off the corners. Just kind of having fun with it. I do have to cut a tenon in this, and I don't want to cut all the way through. But this tenon has to ultimately come down to the 2-inch, the same size as the top of the spindle. At this point, I'm just going to straighten off the front, and then I'm going to use drill bits. And I'm just using drill bits big enough to accommodate the size for my light socket so that I can remove some mass, get down in there. My light socket does have a little turning switch. I think next time I would not use the turning switch and put the switch on the cord, but this did actually work out okay. It was just a little bit tricky to figure out. I think most every light socket's going to be slightly different, so just go with it. I just slightly oversized everything and drilled a hole. Now at this point I have to get this tenon right. Then I'm just going to round over the front edge, the top edge. So I'm just rounding over the top edge here. And this is going to be for the glass, the bowl. It's just going to sit right in there. Yep. So my threaded rod, I'm just going to screw it in, and I'm going to use super glue on this just for the sake of, I actually at the time don't have epoxy. I don't actually recommend it. It was threaded well enough. I should have just left it alone, but I didn't. Or if you wanted to buy the long thread and run it clear through, you could do that too, but I didn't feel like doing that. So the little threaded nub for the switch, I'm going to use calipers just as a depth gauge, pretty much. Just a depth gauge until I'm pretty confident, and then I leave a pencil mark. This little nub here with the threads for this. Tip, slide it all the way up, mark your hole, and then drill it. I had mine down a little bit too low. Ultimately, I ended up sanding that hole and making it an oval, but it still worked. So the turning knob here, I didn't film a lot of this at all. It's just a little honey dipper, and I drilled a hole in it, and I put a little brass insert. They're 1-inch lamp extensions or whatever, and I epoxied that in to give it some strength. I'm going to talk about wood finish for a second. I got spray on acrylic, wipe on poly. Now ultimately I liked this, all my buddies liked this, and my wife chose this, so that's what he went with, and that's what I'll continue to go with, right? Okay, so everything's clear coated, done, ready to assemble. Now I need to wire it up. My cord has a molded plug. It's actually kind of a pain in the butt, so I'm going to show you a really simple trick. Just use some string and I kind of loosen the end up. So I've got our base in there, it's not screwed in. I'm going to take my wire, I'm going to split it a little bit. I'm going to make 2 loops. I'm going to come around and pass over this side and come up. And before I pull that tight, I'll take this other loop that I made and push it through the loop. So ultimately, that's kind of what we're looking for. Now I'm going to use the smooth side to the gold wire, and the rough side, the side with the ridges, will go to the silver screw. I'm going to wrap in a clockwise direction on the screw. You want to snug these up. I'm going to do the other side real quick. Now we will screw the base in. I already kind of determined the height of mine. If you're not real sure, you could not really glue that post in and just kind of change the height. So now we put our base on, or the glass, the globe, whatever you call it. Yeah, and the little just kind of goes in here. Oh shit. And you want to adjust that to the point that you're happy with it. And there we go. That's one lamp. That's my very first lamp. My name is Mitch. This is Mitch Makes, guys. Thanks for watching.